Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Atchison County Commission meeting for Tuesday, March 11th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The County Clerk will handle the roll call.
Commissioner Quinn,
Present.
Commissioner Campbell, not present, Commissioner Knoll.
Present.
We do not have an invocation this morning. Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Or tell me.
Oh, yeah.
Public comment.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing none. Oh,
There was none.
None, okay. Approval of the agenda. So we're gonna make some amendments to the day's agenda, Eric, due to the illness of the finance director. So under consent agenda, we won't have a finance director review. And also at 11:15, we won't have a finance director update. So we're gonna be moving those. But other than that, we can also take a couple of these. Well, we can just pass that. Okay, so we're gonna remove the finance director parts. Are you okay with that? If so, I'd like a motion to approve this week's agenda.
So moved.
Okay, we'll second, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 2-0. So on our consent agenda, we have two weeks of minutes. We have February 25th of 2025 and March 4th of 2025. I'd look for a motion to approve both as written. So moved, and I will second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 2-0. Commissioner comments, Commissioner Knoll.
Okay, last night we had the meeting with the townships. I thought it went well. I wish it could have been a little better attended, but I thought we had a pretty good meeting. And it seemed like there was something else. I can't remember what the other thing was, so.
Okay. So yes, township meeting was good. And then I have a Northeast Kansas Multi-County Health Board meeting tonight in Hiawatha, special meeting. So that's all I got.
Do you know where that's at, the meeting place is?
No, I don't. I was
Okay,
gonna
ask
find,
me later and I
Okay.
can fill you.
gonna find that out this afternoon. There are no presentations of petitions or proclamations. And we have Joe Snyder, Road and Bridge Superintendent, up first with a BG proposal on shop, noxious weed annual report, and department update.
Oh, Clint
Yes.
is here from BG to go over the information.
You guys want to come on up?
Yeah. Grab another chair. Up here?
Yeah, if you come here, that way you're
Oh,
on the
I see.
microphone.
Yes. You got a chair. So Clint is here from BG to go over the scope of services
Okay.
that we'd asked him to.
Awesome.
And open for any questions we would have.
Right, so I'm Clint Hibbs with BG Consultants. I'm an architect principal at the firm. Ours is an AE firm, which means we're an architecture and engineering firm all in-house. So we kind of bring all disciplines together. Our proposal here is for the design for construction of a 13,500 square foot facility for road and bridge and associated site work. What we will provide is architectural design, structural engineering, mechanical engineering, plumbing engineering, electrical engineering, and civil engineering. Surveying has already been performed of the site, and so that is not an additional service that needs to be associated with this project. We will go through and develop construction documents and specifications that will allow the project to be bid out as the county would to potential bidders on the project to look for a lowest qualified bidder associated with the project. The only item that's an exterior outside of our scope of services is geotechnical services. So once we begin and know exactly where the building's going to lie, We will coordinate with Joe and then bring forward to you a recommendation of a geotechnical engineer that you might consider engaging to bore and test soil so that building settlement doesn't occur over time in the particular area that the building is located. Our process will go through meetings. We'll meet generally about every 2 weeks with Joe and representatives, whether there's county commissioners that may want to be a part of that process. We can invite those individuals to that. And then we'll go through a process called schematic design, where we kind of get the schematics put together of just kind of the general layout, confirm those things that were developed in concept. We'll develop design development documents. Gets a little bit more detail. That's where we'll really sit down with staff and talk about the logistics of just how our crew is working in and out of the building. What are some things that we need? Where do we need cabinetry, so on and so forth. And then we'll go into the construction document phase. That's really where we get very critical and analytical in the details for the project. We'll create construction documents and a specification manual that will define the parameters which contractors will construct or bid and construct the project for you. This process that we have will also engage bidding and negotiation phase services. So we will assist with bidding and negotiation of the successful lowest bidder qualified for the county, give recommendations and assist in that regard. And then we have as an option for additional services. We know that Joe's will qualify to represent the county on the construction of the project. And so we have additional services available if you should so choose to engage us to assist in construction administration during the course of the project construction. What that entails is coming on site, observing the concrete pours, the placement of rebar, the site development, placement of AB3, things like that, the development of the plumbing and other systems before walls get framed in or furred in and so on and so forth. And then doing pay application reviews, reviewing submittals from the contractor. And those are general services that are part of construction administration that we'd be happy to provide for you if needed once we get to that juncture in the project process. That is essentially the scope of work that we have provided for you. We've provided a base bid construction or our basic services was based on about a $1.6 million project. So we have a fee structure of $131,160. That is inclusive of all those services I've described to you already, and will be established during the course of the project. If the construction of the project goes up, our fee will not adjust upwards with the cost of construction if that becomes an item that we review. We will provide an estimated opinion of cost at different phases so that you are empowered and Joe is empowered to bring information to you about the cost of the project. If it's impacted by tariffs or something like that, we'll have that information provided for you so that you're well informed and can make a decision on how you want to proceed.
Some questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have some questions.
Okay.
I was just in everything you listed as your scope of work, in my head, economical decision-making for this project is very important. We have determined that when we put this out to bid, it is in our best interest to have the awarded contractor be the general contractor, right?
Yes.
To do all the things. So, I just took a few notes of things that I would like to have a conversation of, maybe if we reduced it off your fee, because so when we first started, we talked about a design of road and bridge facility. You did that kind of in our first phase. We're still utilizing that layout of the building so is that included again in this?
No. So this starts from that point and builds from that point. This does not add in a redesign of the element. Now, I will say that there may be changes that we want to refine in the plan. That isn't going to be an additional cost or anything in that regard.
Okay.
Moving forward, this also does, and I didn't clarify the extent of site components of it, but it does extend to utilities, the civil services for those utility infrastructure plans
Okay,
as well.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't being charged again to design it when we already had paid before to have a
Absolutely, great
design.
question. No, and we're not charging for basically concept development. That's where we start with schematic design. Concept development was really that usually that concept development ranges between $4,500 to $7,900 usually, and that's really where we were at with you on the previous study.
Okay. Also, when we talked about meetings every 2 weeks, helping us determine where we're gonna put cabinetry, negotiating bids, like some of those items, again, I don't feel would be a good fit. And the fact of in negotiating, like what we need is someone to do the things you said at the beginning, like the plans
Mhm.
with all of the details for the contractor, right? Something
Yes.
we can go out to bid with and we can say, here you go, this is what the county wants. And we get the bids, and then there's usually no negotiating for us in the public, like the public, we open our RFPs, you might want some clarity, but as far as like going back and negotiating, we usually, it's an open process.
Yes,
Because it's not
yes.
like a private, like if we were doing it on our own, we definitely negotiate everything, but it's more of comparing apples to apples, giving everybody the information up front, getting the numbers back, making our selection, and then moving forward. And so the meeting every 2 weeks, again, trying to reduce costs on what this looks like, I don't think that would really be needed. I feel like once you guys would give us the information we need to turn over to a general contractor,
Mhm.
then that meeting would be with the general contractor just throughout the project, right? From
Right.
beginning to end.
Mhm.
So just, those are some things that, again, if we can look at maybe reducing the cost down to just what that looks like. And maybe you have feedback for me on why you feel that's important. I just,
Mhm.
if we're paying a premium and a contractor to oversee the project, hopefully we're choosing someone qualified to do that, right?
Oh,
Without
absolutely.
needing an architecture engineer throughout the entire thing, if we do the upfront work.
Certainly, and that's what's important about the prospect that we put together in our proposals to kind of facilitate that engagement of putting together the details so that you do have the apples to apples bidding scenario when you do take it out to bidders. So, for example, in the project, we'll develop a base bid scope of work, and I'll kind of reference like cabinetry, for example. Cabinetry might be like we have a break room. Might be an alternate. We won't necessarily need to sit down with you and go through. We want this color of countertop. But we can say for the contractors to bid equitably, we can say just a Formica countertop color to be selected by owner or coordinated with owner, for example. And so we've pulled out interior design detail services in that regard, but we'll have enough content so that you're at least getting apples to apples bidding at the end of the day.
For a
and
turnkey
for a turnkey project. Absolutely.
Okay.
So what you're saying is this would be discussions made before we go to the actual bid.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it
we'll
would-
have
it
discussions.
would be
about
like,
it.
and then the other question I would have, have you guys had a chance to look at the cost that I came up with?
We're in the process of evaluating that cost. I haven't gotten feedback from my engineers on the estimates that were prepared by the different trades, at least as far as initial thoughts. But I would imagine that they have a good sense of the feel of the industry in this area, those bidders.
So if you would let us know if you feel like it's gonna be a little bit more, or, and then if we needed to make some type of a change to stay within the budget we're in.
Mhm.
Is that something, I mean, I don't know if you understand what I'm asking. So when you get that feel, you'll be able to let us know that you think that this can happen for close to that, or do you already
Absolutely.
feel like it can?
Well, I think that we'll really know when we sit down and start doing the schematic design, where we kind of refine the site plan a little bit and get an idea of the building configurations to come pretty straightforward, but we'll be checking values of cost at that time. And we'll have an idea of where things are tracking. And that's where we come into this idea of alternates. Alternates are things that you may not have to have right away, but things that you need in the project or may want to have in the project that you could either do outside of the scope of this particular phase or you could do in the future. We want you to have all those opportunities up front but this will empower you to kind of have a kit of tools to say, here's the base, but we have the building, we have the site access, and then we have these other features or amenities that we want to bring in, can be kind of those alternates. For example, I believe that we define in there radiant tube heat as the heating system, as the basis of design. Maybe we go through the design process, and as we're going through this, maybe somebody recommends doing floor heat, radiant heat, which is a great system to use. Can be cost effective. It can be listed as an alternate so that when bidders put out the cost, they can say, well, it'll be an addition of this much dollars to put that in that system, radiant tube, in lieu of the radiant floor, in lieu of the radiant tube heat, or it's a deduct or an add, what have you, and you'll be empowered to kind of decide equitably among those contractors that respond which way you want to go. In regards to meetings, our meeting frequency can be adjusted within the scope of the project. We're meeting regularly internally as a team to facilitate the design of the process. We like to bring in the owner when we can, the county, to help facilitate those decision-making processes early on. Like I said, an example, how do you want the finished floor, polished concrete or distilled concrete? We need to have base information in the contract documents that the contractors that are bidding know what they're bidding for or towards, so that you have that equitable bidding value at the end of the day.
I would like to see, and if you could help me understand the process when, because I only have experience on a personal level of building, say a home, okay? So we know our budget and we know what we can spend. We're gonna take that and give it to you and say, okay, this is, these are our local budget numbers we got that we feel that we can obtain this, but we won't exceed our budget numbers.
Right.
So then it's up to us to work with you as you develop these plans to say, you know what, we don't need that high-end trim, right? We're going to downgrade because we want to
Right.
stay within our budget.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure that we have that clear communication that we stay within our budget. Because that's how decisions are made, right? On
Mhm.
personal projects of
Absolutely.
you have to weigh your pros and cons to stay within your budget, and just making sure, because we have had a project historically that we had budget numbers for, and we got to the table, we bid it out, got to the table, 3 different bids, and it was much higher, right?
Mhm.
So I don't want that to happen again, because we have capital funds that we're looking at of this is what we have to work with right now.
Oh, absolutely.
So just making sure that we're on the same page of no, because it's a bad look for everyone, right? First of all, we're in a position where there's no additional capital funds outside what we have,
Mhm.
and staying within that to know people didn't waste their time bidding it. We can execute, everybody feels good about it, all of those things. So
Excellent. So kind of to address that challenge of the market, because the market does fluctuate in construction. One of the things that we do is, and I mentioned this base bid alternates component in there, and let me kind of further explain the intent there. What we like to do is look at 85 to 90% of the fixed budget that's allowable for the project, and kind of work towards that being what we call the base bid, the base amount of work to get a successful project. And then on top of that, with that extra 15 to 10%, we like to have the alternates in there, I use as a reference, maybe a different type of mechanical system, or maybe you wanted to have the flexibility to have some exhaust control within the building. That may not be required at this point, but it might be nice so that you could have vehicles running while you're doing some work on them, things like that. That could be an alternate. And so what happens is you have that base bid, which you're comfortable coming in on the bidding value, but you might have a little bit of room to be able to kind of upgrade within the budget to certain parameters.
okay.
And so that's how we approach it. Budget's very important. I mean, that's what makes or breaks a project
Yep.
at the end of the day, and we understand and respect that. And that's really going to be a key component of our design process. And that's why even early on in the schematic design process, in each phase, there'll be 3 different times that we're putting together estimates in a lot more detail. Early on, kind of the midpoint, and then later on in the construction documents right before we got to bid, to kind of evaluate where are we tracking, so that you're able to say, yeah, we're tracking in the right spot. We're comfortable moving forward. And we also validate this. We use RS Means as a platform to understand data costs within the industry, nationwide and locally. And then we kind of bounce those values off of not just what we've seen from bidding values, because we've done a lot of facilities like this. We have contemporary data that we can compare to. But we also coordinate with contractors, the values of the industry. What are they seeing? Is something shifting somewhere? So for example, on this project right now, we're thinking of all steel framing, even offices being steel studded in. Contractors may say, look, wood might be more cost effective for just framing in the offices. And so we may shift that as an option within the construction. And still, that'll maintain your longevity of building. As long as you enclose it, weather it in, your building longevity is going to last a very long time, for decades.
And that would be a recommendation from your company.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would give you the recommendation of which way we would recommend going for that. And I think that's something that's one of the values that we bring as really as advisors in design. That's one of the things that we're doing as architects and engineers.
Another question. So we have used you for our initial kind of design, process where you came and gave us your thoughts on that. If we were, because with a price tag of 131,000, if we were to get other quotes for what you just went over with us today, how does that look as far as the initial layout? Can we still utilize what we paid for that initial layout to have someone else look and give us proposals?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the documents that we prepare is intended to give you that option for proposals. So the way that the way that our fee is set up, we just set up about 8%. 8% is kind of an industry standard for new construction, 7 to 8.
Okay.
What that doesn't include typically is civil engineering is considered an outside scope of services. We've included that just because it's an in-house firm.
Okay.
So really I don't know what that breaks down to. It's less than 8%, but we feel that we're competitive within the market. But certainly as you look at other phases, we really want to be able to work with the county moving forward. But as it goes on into RFQ, RFP, we hope we have the opportunity to be able to submit our interest on those additional steps that the county looks at. But the documents we've prepared for you, those documents are intended for you to be able to utilize as a roadmap, a living document moving forward, so that we're not the only ones that are limited to be able to provide that service for you.
Okay. And if we were to determine, we were to move forward, what is your estimated time frame from the day you're told, oh, the county decided to move forward, to when we're ready to go out for bid?
Okay, great. So our maximum timeline that we would have for this project would be 24 weeks from the moment of notice to proceed or signing of the agreement. We would work less than that, but that would be the longest period of time based on just availability of meeting, coordinating with representatives from the county. Like you said, there's already been some legwork kind of prepared in the initial planning phase. That kind of gives us a great standing point or stepping stone to be able to move forward. And so I think that again, that 24 weeks maximum would be what we'd look at for a full design process.
Okay. So 6 months. So would this be something going into the fall, and when you think you could accomplish? I mean, would you bid it out for the following spring, or would you
Yeah, so I understand where you're going. So my thought is where we're at right now, ideally what I would like to see, or I'd recommend for the county, is bidding it in early fall.
Okay.
So that site work and foundations and footings are being installed late fall before the winter springs into action. And that way they're doing building erection and other site work at that time.
Okay.
So that might be a little bit shorter than that 24-week period, but that's really going to be a good window. Is if you're bidding around September, that would be a great time. You'll have bidders that are very much interested in the project. They're going to be looking for work. Generally, bids they're pretty competitive. A good time is in the fall and in the spring. Those are two really good times to get bids out for contractor review. You can bid at other times, and that's perfectly fine. But historically, we've seen a lot of success and a lot of interest in those periods of bidding windows.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely. This is just
So the process of determining whether our quotes are going to be close, we wouldn't start that. You wouldn't be able to tell us until after we've already hired you and got started on the project.
Yeah.
Or because I would like to kind of know, well, a little bit before that, if we felt like this was gonna if this was gonna fit.
Mhm.
And then be able to, if there's things that we need to cut back or look at. Put it, I mean, maybe before we would put it out to bid. Am I making sense?
Yes.
I mean, that's because the concern is the cost if this goes through. But that would be my concern. Is that something we would do before the commissioners would say whether they're going to do this, because they've still got to decide what they want to do. So we would have an idea of this is going to be fairly close.
Yeah, so I think in that regard, the phases like I described, there's the schematic, the design development, and the CD phase. We will know in that schematic. So early on, in the process, before we've expended all of this effort, we will know very well a good touch point on where we're at economically for the cost of the project and scope of work. So I think that one of the things to keep in mind is that if we get to that point of schematic design and we've only invested 15 or 10% of the fee structure at that point, based on the effort of work, a lot of that work happens at the construction document phase when we're putting together the documentation that the contractors utilize to bid the documents. You'd be empowered to be able to say, yes, this is tracking where we think it is, or no, it's not. Maybe we need to stop and put this on the shelf for a period of time or keep it moving forward.
Yeah, so I feel like we're based on our initial, when you brought back the plan, right? We definitely realized this is gonna have to be phased.
Oh,
Phased out.
absolutely.
And so, getting local numbers, even though they're budgetary numbers, made us realize, okay, you gotta start somewhere.
Mhm.
And that's why I think it's important if we tell you, this is all we have to work with. And then you work with that to say, okay, you can get this far in the project, and then you can determine, all right, we'll wait on the pad for this or expanding that'll be up to you to say, but at least if we could get the building going,
Right.
get things going, because then once we can move to a location, you're gonna see savings, that's
Oh,
why we're doing
absolutely.
this with efficiencies, and then we can sell the property and get it on the tax roll here, and it's kind of a domino effect, but we gotta start somewhere, and so I think everybody's hesitancy is just here's our capital funds.
Yeah,
This
we
is
have
what
you
use.
have a finite value,
Yes,
and
sir.
we
And-
understand that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and-
we'll work very closely with you on that understanding of, here's your value where it's at, or total project costs, and are we on track to meet that or under that?
Yep.
At each step of the phase, so that you're empowered. All of you are empowered to be able to say yes to the voters. We're moving to your constituents. We're moving in the right direction. We're spending money wisely.
Yes, sir.
We understand the importance of that position that you're in, and we want to be a vehicle to help you realize that accurately as you're planning forward, so that you don't have that big surprise. Because there's nothing worse than going through the process and then having that big surprise of, wow, it's a budget buster that you didn't anticipate. And there can be unknown things. We saw things in COVID and stuff like that occurred, but right now we've seen a lot of stabilization in the market. Even with the tariffs that are pending or unprocessed, I think we have a good sense in the industry of kind of where things are tracking. So I feel really confident that we're able to be a resource to you to understand that and to work closely throughout that process, and provide updates to the commission as is appropriate on where we're at in each phase, so that you can see what it is that's being developed, or what's going to be available within that budget and what that budget looks like.
Okay, I have a couple of things. So this scope of work, I didn't hear about, once we break ground and we have local contractors doing this, oversight over their progress, their quality of work, and that. Is that beyond, that's not in this scope?
That is not in this scope. It's listed as an additional service because we know that the county was trying to be resourceful in its investment. We are available on either an hourly basis or for generally as a measure of idea of costs. If we're very involved in construction administration, that's generally somewhere around 15% of the total project fee, design fee, not the project cost. So that'd give you an idea of what, if we're fully involved doing regular observations of the construction of the work coming in, like I said, kind of checking footing installations, things like that, doing submittals.
Can that be piecemeal? It's like,
It can be.
we need oversight on the footing or the concrete work, because we just want we can just say we need you for that and then not necessarily for the whole project.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of the way that we have that is set up in the proposal agreement. We listed out under additional service construction phase services, and there's a lot of items underneath that. You don't have to pick all of those items congruently.
Okay.
We recommend construction administration. We think we provide an important service there, but also we have individuals that are familiar with construction and familiar with the industry. There are things that you can step out on your own and reasonably perform in that regard. But certainly if you want us to come and just, like you said, observe the concrete work, that's something that we have experts that focus on that specific element of the project.
Okay, also you mentioned the floor heating.
Mhm.
Now, is that where they actually put there's tubing in the floor and,
Yes.
okay, I know around here, our ground settles horribly. We're known for that. How would that work if you had a crack in the concrete once you had all this tubing in there? Does that make that obsolete or I mean, if you've got a major crack in the floor and this tubing's running through there, you know, it's going to start breaking. Well, I don't understand how that in our demographic and the way our ground is that would ever work or
Well,
continue working.
And it may
over
not
much-
be. I did use that as an example. I will say that the geotechnical report is an important aspect of that component where what we will do is on behalf of the county, we'll reach out to multiple geotechnical engineers. We'll get information to Joe that he can share with you on their cost. And they will give us basically their proposal. We'll recommend the lowest cost. Maybe it's geotech, who knows? But what they'll do is they'll define the parameters of the soil, and then we design specifically those parameters to help resist that settling. Now, in regards to resistance to settling within the tubing, typically that tubing is somewhat resilient. You know, having minor cracking in the concrete really is not going to be an issue. But if it does settle, you know, differentially, there's the possibility of shearing the piping. So that is always a possibility in that regard. And it may not be the direction that you want to go. I use that as an example, as something that we could be exploring as a possibility.
Yeah, that comes to mind because I know everything that I've seen around here settles and cracks. And so I don't think I could get myself to that, ever vote for that.
Yeah, well, and another thing I've seen with that too is that especially if you want flexibility in your facility, like if you want to mount lifts, for example, in there and you want to drill them into the floor, you really can't do that once you have tubing in the floor because you could compromise your system. So there's some pros and cons to that kind of system. There's pros and cons to the radiant tube heat. Like radiant tube heat is very commonly used in a lot of environments like this and seems to be a very successful application. But again, I agree. There could be challenges with different types of systems, and those things we'll talk about during the design process. We'll have our MEP engineers in place so that they can talk about, here's the logistics of what we've seen in a lot of places. What do you want to do here? These are the implications of those options. And then you'll be able to be empowered to say, yeah, we do want the radiant tube heat versus the forced air heat in a space.
Just to get a little bit more clarity on the proposal cost of what you would mention meeting every 2 weeks and supervision. Is that you working with the contractors direct or just pointing out to the commission like, that you might want to look into that? Like, are you overseeing the project?
We're overseeing the design of the project through bidding, and then as an additional service, we would be available to you on an on-call basis afterwards. So yeah. So, and again, those meetings that we have may be 3 weeks, 2 weeks, what have you. Just when we're starting on the process, we want to move quickly and provide information so that, again, decision-making can be made. Again, we don't necessarily need to articulate the finished colors of certain things, but we can write it in the specs in a way in plans that all the bidders are equitably bidding off of base color samples of a product or something of that nature, and then they'll actually coordinate with you on the actual or you on the final finish.
So through the process, then as contractors have questions, you're the point of contact through that process until execution. Once execution comes, then
Right, yeah, so we'll,
depending on if we want to utilize you or have Joe be that point of contact for questions.
absolutely, and
you're
we'll be
working
available as a
directly with
resource.
Contractors.
Absolutely, yeah. So during that process, especially during the bidding process, contractors will be very much involved. They'll have questions. During the bidding process, we'll have a pre-bid meeting. It's not going to be mandatory unless you decide it to be so. I'd recommend non-mandatory where bidders can come. We have a meeting. We walk the project through to them, explain the intent of the project, answer any questions they may have, and then provide a period of time. Typically, I would anticipate a project this scale bidding over a 4-week period. 4 to 5 weeks is probably appropriate for this scale of project to allow bidders time to be able to coordinate with their subcontractors on the information that they need for the costs and so forth. So that kind of goes back to this idea. If we want to bid it, again, it's September, early September, you'd be able to award in October, or maybe we shift that forward to August to where you're able to award in September, give about a month of development, preparation, and mobilization for the contractor, and then they're starting in October. And again, we'll refine that schedule as we're moving forward and really hone in on the details of logistics in that regard. But I do think, kind of moving beyond the specifics of your question, I do think you want it to be built construction beginning this year, in 2025, because usually you'll see an escalation cost factor that comes in, particularly like in March and April every year, and you want to be well ahead of that.
Thank you.
Yes.
You have any other questions?
No.
This was really good. I appreciate you coming and being able to visit about this and answer questions so that, Commissioner Campbell's gonna watch and discern this, and then we can all get our heads together and work with Joe on what direction we want to go. Do you have any other questions, Joe?
No, I think he's answered everything. And, the availability of all the options on cost and is very important because everybody knows, and we want to be physically responsible to the taxpayers, and we want to come in where we need to, But I feel like I've got everything I need to know today, so.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Clint.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is noxious weed E&O report. Hi, Ben.
How are you?
How's it going?
Good. So we have 2 items. One is the 2025 management plan for this year.
Okay.
What our plans are to do with that. And then the second would be the 2024 eradication report, progress report for 2024.
Okay.
So I have here kind of the basic layout. The main thing that changed with that compared to last year is I do have a spray helper on there. Of course, we all know that weeds are never gonna disappear, so
Seems like the more you look, the more you find.
the plan, yes, and
When do we bid out chemical?
well, we have decided that we're not really bidding out chemical till we need it. So we've had an abundance of some chemical on hand, especially I have chemicals set aside for county use and then set aside for sale use. Found it a lot simpler, and especially with the way some of our distributors are now, that if I'm low on 2,4-D, I can order a pallet of it and have it come. And the reason that we kind of switched to doing that is because we don't want to be stuck with chemical that costs $45 a gallon when you could be buying it at 31. And that price goes to our constituents that with the cost share. So if we buy it at the higher price, well, we're stuck selling it at that. So there's such a fluctuation in price, it can go up and down. Why be stuck with 6 pallets of this at this price?
Explain to them your quote system, then.
Yeah, and then the quotes. So when I need a pallet or some chemical, X amount of chemical, I put out a request for a bid from Nutrient and Van Diest, and there's one other one I'm going to work with this year that I've kind of touched base with. I got to see how their whole bidding process is, but so I price everything in a gallon. So they'll send me just a price per gallon, and I can decide how much of that chemical we want, depending on it's time to spray Sericea lesbidesia, or it's time to spray Johnson grass, or, musk thistle, just because that's where the chemical, and you never know how the year is going to go with that. So you may have high sales in this, and lower sales in Johnson grass. Just depends on that seed decides it wants to grow this year.
Sure.
So we quoted out just like we do other things instead of getting the actual bids. And like Ben said, before everybody bid it all out. And we found out that it's better for us to do it as needed. Because we have chemical that we've been using, been there for a long time. Left over. And Ben does a very good job of getting those out and talking to me and doing what he does. He does a very good job.
And then I can kind of talk about this annual report as well, just some key notes on here that I've noticed, which is good news for us, I believe, because our chemical sales have stayed pretty constant from year to year. So this report doesn't show what the year before had on it, but I just pulled up those numbers, and herbicides sold to the public is roughly around 31,000. Last year it was almost 32,000. So we're staying pretty close to our sales, which is great. People are utilizing our chemicals. And then the surveys that I did this year, I surveyed over 3,608 acres. And that's just looking at land. And acres treated by the county, this is spraying roadside and then spot spraying. I sprayed over 4,949 acres. And that's a lot when you consider we're just spraying roadside.
Mhm.
And so of that 4,900, 317 acres of that was done by hand spraying, walking the land and hand spraying. So I feel like those are pretty good numbers for the amount of time and rainy days and windy days and this and that, I feel like, especially Johnson grass was horrible this year and hard to control. And I had to hit spots 2-3 times just to try to stay ahead of it. And it's
Tough stuff.
tough. Yeah. Anybody, as farmers and this and that, it's tough. And
Sometimes one spraying will do it, and other times if it's weather's not just cooperating, or maybe it's dry, it's not getting an uptake or something there, you got to keep on.
well, and further education on it too, that I've started to educate a lot of our customers is having an adjuvant with your spray. Like I can test the water in Effingham, and the pH levels are really high in Effingham.
Mhm.
And so when you think about chemical, you want to bring your pH levels down, because all this chemical is tested in a factory, and they have purified water they test it with. So that's how they're getting 100% use of that chemical. So if you don't have your pH levels right, you could be dropping up to 20% of the viability of that chemical if you don't have your water treated correctly.
Interesting.
Yeah, didn't know that.
Awesome. All right, I would look for a motion to approve the 2025 noxious weed management plan as presented by our noxious weed director.
Some
I will second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 2-0.
And then, which I kind of already talked a little bit about the annual report. There's a lot of information in there that if you want to look at just say Johnson grass on its own, there's a sheet for that. There's a sheet for each weed on there that we had treated. And it gets pretty in depth as the amount of, say, 2,4-D we sold, or glyphosate we sold, or this or that, to which weed that was used to treat. And it's a pretty good report, but there's a lot to read there.
Yeah. Looks good.
Per weed. I know that my constituents have, I've heard nothing but praise on noxious weed and the visibility you guys are out and about, and everyone sees you, and the resources you've been for them, just stopping to ask a question or so.
Well, and
Definitely appreciated for sure.
I personally have really focused on the education side of it. Was just last year in that report, you can see I didn't file one single complaint or report to the county because I found going and not finding out who owns the land, knocking on the doors, educating them they have a problem, putting a plan together with them, and then rechecking on it. 99% of the time, I just see them taking care of it because they want to see hands-on somebody to talk to rather than just a letter showing up in the mail.
Amen. Yes.
And I
Totally
spend a
agree.
lot of time doing that.
Yep. That's awesome though. It's an,
Very good.
I can have Susan scan
Yeah.
that if you want, and then that way we have it in there. Blue folder here.
Yeah, because he'll need that, we've got to send that in.
Is that okay? She'll
Yeah.
scan it and then we have a record of it.
And have you explained before, Ben, how the acres are selected by the state?
Yeah, so the state will send me 12 random sections of land to inspect. And they also send along with that 5 subsections if you're not able to inspect this section. Say like if I'm got a section on the river, obviously I'm not going to take a boat out and inspect the river.
Mhm.
But so in this subsection that I inspect, I physically, I get out and I walk land and that's part of that acreage I showed that I surveyed. And you're looking for, one, this is cropland, soybeans, corn, pasture, CRP ground. You document all that and you walk, and because of these sections that they have to inspect, that gives us an estimated acreage of noxious weeds in Atchison County. And it helps us track, okay, is bull thistle or musk thistle starting to move north to south? Is it coming from another county? Like we noticed our teasel, it's coming from the Leavenworth side and kind of creeping in a little bit. And we're trying our best to eradicate it.
Which one was that?
Teasel.
Teasel.
And it's another hardy plant that's hard to kill. And part of the problem is you want to get it killed before the state does their mowing. And it's a lot of it's on the state highway right now. So rather than trying to contract that through the state, if I see it, I take it upon my responsibility, and Joe helps me too. Like if he sees it, he can tell me where it's at, and because we want to get there immediately and spray it because it will take over quick.
Yeah.
And so, and unfortunately, it's going to be it's going to be like a musk thistle. Pretty soon, it's going to be in places you don't want it, and it's just going to be a hassle. Now, I will say that the legislature this year, we found this out at our conference, that common teasel and cutleaf teasel are going to be a statewide noxious weed instead of a county option weed. So therefore, that helps regulate a little more, where if I see it on someone's property, now I have a means to say, this is state regulated. Now you have to take care of this.
Makes sense.
So
So,
we had already added that.
and we had added it, yeah. This just gives us a little more push to,
Yeah, it's recognized by the state.
Yeah.
Statewide as a noxious weed.
Awesome. Do you work with surrounding county noxious weed directors too? Do you have relationships?
yes, we have part of our ongoing education, which I think is really important. We meet once a month with the KWD, the Weed Directors Association is what it is. And a lot of us get together and we can talk about, they've got some chemical that has been working on this, and I've been doing this and seen good results. And we talk back and forth, and like, just for instance, at this conference we were at, I talked to Jim Norris and Donovan, and he is recommending that when we spray this spring spray, to put some Banquet in with it, which Banquet's the same as Remedy, although Remedy's not labeled for roadside and this is.
Mhm.
So we're able to use that and that's a big plus to me, because Remedy will hold a residual in the ground to help kill.
Sure.
If you're, and I'll just give some education, like a musk thistle. It starts out as a rosette the first year on the ground. The second year is where it pops up and you get your flower. So if you have that residual on the ground, your chances of killing the rosette plus a plant that might be coming up next to it is way greater than just spraying it without that residual on the ground.
Interesting.
Very good.
All right, I would look for a motion. Do we have to
Yeah, there's a,
Sorry, I'm just.
I have it kind of tabbed on there somewhere on the side.
Oh, I see it right here. Perfect. I look for a motion to adopt and approve the annual noxious weed eradication progress report for 2025 as required by K.S.A. 2-1316 and presented by our noxious weed director, Ben Taylor.
So move.
I will second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 2-0.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I feel like and Joe and I've talked about it quite a bit. Every time I go to one of these monthly meetings or annual meeting, I always come out of it with something. I mean, it's just,
That's awesome. It's nice to go to training and then feel like it's worthwhile.
well,
right?
you
Like
want
you're
to, you
not-
want to know that you're doing everything. And Joe and I really focused on doing things how they're supposed to be done.
Mhm.
And it slows down progress a lot of times, but that's the right way to do it. That would be all I have.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you,
very
Ben.
much.
Quick department update, we will be sending the Ottawa Road project out to bid in the next day or two. Susan, I believe, when I get the documents, I'll tell you the date or the time on the first when they want to open bids. I believe right now, bids will be accepted until 10:15 and at 10:45 they would open them. So, but when I get that information, I will get that to you.
Till 10:15.
They will accept bids until 10:15
Oh.
April 1st in the morning, and then at 10:45 we would open them. So we have to be on the same page so that all the
Sure.
contractors.
I was thinking date.
Yeah, no.
10:15, I'm going, what?
Yeah, so
Sorry.
we're still waiting on some culverts to get here so we can get those put in on Ottawa Road. We're blading roads right now and we are replacing a lot of culverts. They are to the point where they have to be. In a lot of places, we're running into the landowner's property, their waterway is silted into the top or over the top of the tube. So we're cleaning them out to the end of the right of way. We've raised the tubes as far as we can, but you get to a point where you can't. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And what we're doing is trying to work on the gravel roads, and I'll be getting a hold of somebody and we'll see about patching what my budget allows me to on the surface roads. Any questions? I thought the meeting last night went well.
Yeah.
I really did. It was done in a manner that's the best one I've been involved in since I've been here. As
Yeah.
far as the input and everybody keeping on task, and that was great.
Yep, I did too. That was good. Really good feedback.
Good.
Any questions?
No, the only thing is you're working on that 310th road, right? We got the pictures. It was in Eric's district and I sent it last week. I just told
Okay,
him- just
so
told
I
him
went
that
out,
we're
I went
working
out,
on it.
I went out and I looked at it, and I need to get I need to get hold of Mark.
Okay.
What happens is with the snow melt comes down a neighbor's driveway, cannot get to the ditch, and it runs down the edge of the road. So, and rain is gonna be the same way. So I'm gonna get a hold of him, and when it dries out, we're probably gonna have to ask them, we'll have to remove their mailboxes. And we're gonna have to cut a ditch and somehow work with that driveway to drain,
Okay.
because that's where it's coming from.
Perfect.
Because I went out and I looked at it and I'm like, okay, what do we got going on here?
Yep.
And then we will, as soon as it's dry enough, we will take care of that. But do you happen to have his phone number?
I
You
think
could
it's
send-
this
you could-
number, yes,
If
because
you can.
Yep.
If you can send it to me, just share it with me. That
I
would be
did save
great.
it. I
Yeah,
can send
just-
it right now.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. But no, that's what I found out there
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. And it was nice to see it while it was happening instead of, if it's a big rain, by the time you get out there, you don't see it. So, nope, that's our plan of action there.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right,
Yeah.
all right,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Use the restroom.
Okay.
Excuse me.
I know, I was just looking in the budget to see, because I would have thought it would be under contractual services. Or maybe licensing and dues, but. Which again, you'll be able to organize, you'll put
Been working on it.
on how you want that to look. So if you want in the future. I just need to make a note of where we're gonna do it out of for. Do you think licensing and dues probably?
It's an annual fee.
Yeah.
so-
Okay. Yeah, because in that line item for last year was only $575. So just want to make sure we get it increased to what it needs to be.
And I can, dig in and see where it was pulled from. Previously, if it's not listed on there, it had to be pulled from somewhere.
Yeah,
Are you
So
on the
only-
clerk budget or the election one?
clerk,
Go to the election.
we'll put them in alphabetical order, maybe that would be a good idea. It all prints as like a huge 63-page document, so. For road and bridge and EMS, I put little sticky notes so I can get to them easily, because usually those we refer to pretty often, but. Found it. Okay, so. Yep, it's under licensing and dues. It just doesn't have a note, so I'm gonna make the note because it's the exact amount we need, so. Okay, perfect. All right, so next up, we have Susan Carrigan, the county clerk, with the state Elvis fee PO for consideration.
Yep, and you just said it all. It's the state level election management system. It's an annual fee of $4,100.
And I double checked for our 2025 budget, we do have it under licenses and dues under the election budget. So I'd look for a motion to approve the purchase order as presented by our county clerk in the amount of $4,100 for 2024 Elvis annual fee.
So move.
Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 2-0. Would that be 25? Next, we have the EMS report from January. Okay. So I would look for a motion to receive and file the report as presented and sent to us by our EMS director.
So move.
Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0. Also, the KCCA was coming up. Didn't know, maybe we should wait till next week. We can leave that on there when Commissioner Campbell's back, but if two of us were to be gone, we could look at either canceling that week or rescheduling that week. So I'll just move that down to unfinished business for next week. Is that good?
Yes.
We have time, but I just wanted to not forget that. Okay, next is so Stacy and Mark, solid waste director, finance director, we're having our countywide cleanup, April 25th and 26th. For the past 2 years, Martin's Trash Service had donated dumpsters for Potter, and wanted to touch base with you because I didn't know if any of the rural areas in your district need one. Both years we've filled up 2, they could have used 3 last year of dumpsters full.
At Potter or?
Yeah, they placed them on the rocked area across from the store, and last year 2 full and enough on the ground that a third one would have been fine, like worked. So anyway, Martin told us last year that we need to purchase, like, begin paying for those, $350 per dumpster. Mark Zeltner checked with Waste Management. It's definitely a good deal to stay local and keep with Martin, and we appreciate everything he's done the past 2 years of
Absolutely.
donating his time and kind of getting things kickstarted until we knew if there's a need. And for Potter, there's definitely a need. So I didn't know if you want any in your district placed, how many we want, so that Stacy can reserve those with Austin.
Well, I think. I haven't had any requests, or I haven't noticed a need observation. I'm sure if we say, do you want one? Everybody would say yes. I mean, you know, but how do we keep that to a minimum?
Yeah.
You know, I if it's a need, I'm open to it.
Yep.
But at the same time, I just don't want to have dumpster setting everywhere and they're only a quarter full.
Right. I think the city of Lancaster placed one last year in their community.
On their own.
Yep. In their community. So if that's somewhere, I mean, really Potter's my only need for it's heavily populated there. It's a long way away. A lot of those folks didn't have trailers or resources to get to the dump. So
I'll make some inquiries and see if there's someplace that thinks that they need,
okay.
there's a need.
All right, so I'm just gonna write Potter down for me, and then I'm gonna get clarification, like if we could allocate funds for 3, but then if we don't use them, right? Because I monitor them, and he had placed it Thursday evening, and then you monitor, okay, Friday he could swap out, and then Saturday, depending on what it looks like, and then they pick them up Monday. So yeah, just let me know, and Mark's not here, so we can do the PO next week.
When would we need to have them spoken for by?
Well, so if we kind of had an idea, next week would be great, and then that would give a month's notice if she could tell him by like the 25th. That would be a month. So maybe if you need a couple weeks to identify that, we could say by the 25th, we'll have a PO.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Mhm.
Okay. So 3/25/25, we put that one on for that agenda. All right, next is Catherine Sparks, Community Corrections 2026 Community Correction Grant Application. Hi. Hello.
So I sent you guys my 3 grants that I have out right now that I'm hoping to submit this week. My first grant is the Adult Comprehensive Plan Grant. That is the grant that funds are the adult services that we offer down at our office. That grant totals at $335,559. $3,223 are directly for client services. And then the rest pays for the facility that we are in, salaries and commodities such as supplies, things like that. I did conclude a payout fund again this year, like I did last year. Although we have 3,223 that has to go to client services, I was able to find some more flexibility within my budget to allocate more money to client services, if need be. So when I say client services, I'm talking mental health evaluations, substance abuse evaluations, treatment, medication, being able to help pay for those items out of the grants. Sober living, we don't have a sober living center here in Atchison, and so we do help pay for 2 weeks for our clients when they get out of inpatient. If they would like to go to an Oxford house or a sober living house, we will help them for the first 2 weeks to be there, and then hopefully that gives them enough time to find a job and continue in that location. And then I did work in a 2.5% COLA. As you know, we follow the state budget or the state pay scale, and it's in front of legislation for a potential COLA. I don't know if they're going to approve it or not, so I just factored it in just in case.
May I ask a couple questions?
Of course.
So when you're talking about the funding figured in for mental health evaluations, is that contracted out with like guidance center?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sober living facility, is that like Valley Hope?
No. So Valley Hope would be inpatient.
Okay.
And then we have, or the state, I shouldn't say the state, there are places around the state that have Oxford houses, which are like sober living.
Okay.
So it's basically an in-between transitional type of housing. They get out of inpatient before they completely go off on their own. They can get extra support. They have to pay rent, things like that, but they have access to NA meetings, all kinds of things that are very nice for them to be able to have. And I think, and don't quote me, but I want to say that we funded either 3 to 4 clients so far this year to go to one of those locations.
Okay.
So
when you say fund, if you're paying the rent, or they're paying the rent? Or-
So what it is they have to have a deposit to get accepted, and then they have to pay a certain amount every week to stay. And so most of the time, since it's not here in our community, we're sending them to a different community to do that. They don't have a job yet, and it also takes a little bit of time to get a paycheck. So we help with that first deposit and that first week's rent.
Okay.
And then from there, it is on them to be able to continue. But we just kind of give them a push
A
start.
boost.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other questions about the grant?
No, so you follow the state pay scale, so with the COLAs, but then the payouts, we follow the county.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
No, it's confusing. I
Yeah.
get it 100%.
Because when I read your email and read it, I was like, I need to ask and get clarity on that, because I wasn't
Yeah,
sure how that works. So,
Yeah.
but it's still state fund.
it's still state funds.
You're just following
I just-
policies of the county.
Yes, so we cannot pay, we follow exactly what the county says.
Okay.
So if the county says they can only get up to $200 if somebody, or 200 hours if somebody retires, which I don't think that's the exact
Right.
amount. Then that's all I can pay out
Okay.
is that amount, but it can come out of my grants. Now, most of my employees have quite a bit of built up time. And so what I put in the grants doesn't cover it all. We do have our reimbursement accounts from the funds that we collect through the contracted services we do that would pay for the other portion of it.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
So here is
All
the
right.
signature page for that one.
Okay. So I look for a motion to approve the FY 2026 Adult Comprehensive Plan as presented by our Community Corrections Director. There's 2 chairperson, so can he sign the other one?
Yes, you
Okay.
can. I don't know
All right.
why they did that.
Also move.
Okay, and I will second, so it's moved and seconded. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes to the. Oh, yeah, there could be 5 of us if we wanted.
And then I did want to give you a quarterly update on the various programs. So to stick with the adult services, For grants in quarter two, which would be October to December 31st, we expensed $72,801 from our grants and then $2,483 from our reimbursement. And again, when I say reimbursement, I'm talking about those funds that we get for bond services, contracted UAs with Cornerstones or DCF locations like that. We did not have any deposit into our grant. They only deposit in twice a year, first and third quarter, but we did deposit $4,138 into our reimbursement account from those collected fees. As of February 13th, we had $228,158 in our grants and $252,905 in our reimbursement account. That reimbursement account's been around for a while, and we've just continued to collect and use it as needed. And then on a positive, our workbooks that I was having such a great time with, they are closed.
Yeah.
I was bound and determined before I went out on maternity leave that was going to get closed. So I got it all worked out. I had to backtrack to FY 2022.
Okay.
And
So you found
basically,
it, though.
yeah, so I took all of our expenses and our deposits and balanced
Yeah.
on my own Excel in essence, and was able to figure out where we were wrong with FY 23. That's the one that KDOC helped us budget out. And then in FY 24. FY 23 affected FY 24. So in January of 2024, when they said that we had to separate all of our accounts to avoid any commingling accounts, we separated them based off of what the state had provided us. And what I found is I did not separate enough out. So there should have been more out of our grants into when we moved our reimbursement, and I did not do that. I left too much in our grants, so I had to fix that. We were able to get KDOC on the phone, and get those closed out. And as of right now, FY 25 quarter one, quarter two is approved, and we are on track to have quarter three approved.
A
So,
huge relief.
yes, so very happy to have that
That's
done.
awesome.
I did send an email, so every month I sit down and balance our budget and make sure that everything is covered. And then if we have some additional funding, if I need to look at an amendment or an allocation of some sort that could help our clients. So while I was budgeting, I did find the state gave us too much in our last deposit. In our adult account, they gave us $43,958 more than they should have. And then in our behavioral health account, they gave us I shouldn't have highlighted this in red, 2,160 more than they should have. I've sent them an email. I'm waiting for a response if they need me to cut them a check, how they want me to handle that. But I have got our budget work to make sure we don't touch those funds, and just wait for KDOC to tell me how it needs to get back to them. I just don't know what they're going to tell me yet.
That's awesome.
So
Way to lead by example, Katie. Finding
we'll
mistake,
see.
mistake.
Fix it right
Well,
away,
yeah.
because it will come back on.
Yes, and that's what I said. I said, I do not want an unbalanced workbook, so I just want to know what to do. So that's where we are on the adult side. On the juvenile side, I sent you guys 2 grants. So the first grant is our comprehensive plan, and that is the $275,478.73. That is the grant that pays for our intake and assessment center and our juvenile probation services, along with, I want to say it's $27,059. That is for the MOU with USD 409 for their truancy officer position. We do have the payout fund. I was able to increase client services through that grant as well. So we don't send youth to transitional living, but we do typically help a lot with mental health, substance abuse evaluations, things that come with a hefty cost that a youth can't afford, and sometimes the families don't have the insurance or can't afford either. I did include that 2.5% COLA, same thing. We follow the state pay grade. But that, I don't know if you guys have any questions on that comprehensive grant. That's the one we have gotten ever since we've taken over, or we've had community corrections on that juvenile side.
I don't have any specific on the grant itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I am applying for 2 new grants this year. I have finished one and it's one that I sent you guys. It is the evidence-based programs grant. So this is $232,940 in funding that I'm applying for. The goal for this is to help fund our program services that we provide to youth in our area that are either a juvenile offender, at risk of being a juvenile offender, have a behavioral health crisis that is a risk to them or others, or crossover youth, so youth that are in DCF or cornerstones and they are potentially going to cross over to the juvenile justice system or vice versa. And then also wanting to use this to create a case manager position. So we've had intake for 2 years now. Throughout intake, we see a lot of times we'll see the same face come in multiple times. We'll have families call us telling us they don't know what to do. Sometimes they meet us at work at 8 a.m. in the morning and we are talking to their child and trying to help them. The other thing is our intake, when you come in, you leave with resources. So the goal is that case manager position, if you come in through intake, you can opt into a case management service and we will help you move along. And when I say move along, I mean, we will help connect you to those resources that we referred you to. Instead of just handing you a paper and encouraging you to do it, we'll sit there and help you get those done. We just had our first, I'm going to call it a community meeting where we got DCF to the table, the courts, and USD 409 have all been invited as well, but we're talking about these kids that are coming in to make sure we're not over programming or giving them too much to do where they're not going to succeed is our goal. So there's so many great things out there, but if we give them too much, it's too overwhelming. Parents already can't, get their kids to every little thing. And now we're telling them to get them to 5 additional things. So we're coming together to try and make sure that we're putting successful plans out there for these kids. And that case manager position would be over that and help with that. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on that new grant.
No.
Okay.
The only question on the grant, all of these have been approved by your board prior to coming.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And the paper that you guys are signing does have the board's signature on them already too.
Oh.
So Tom's signature should have been on that one.
Oh, yeah, it's on page 2. We were on 3.
That's fine. I say unless I
I just
printed off
wanted
the
to know.
wrong thing.
And I think your email said that. I just always like to clarify that.
Nope, you're just fine. So one of those pages, and they say it at the top, one of them is, I want to say it's the one with the paper clip, is the new grant, and the other one is the grant we've gotten this whole time, the juvenile comp plan grant.
Okay. So I would look for a motion to allow the chair to sign the FY 2026 Juvenile Comprehensive Plan Grant as presented by our Community Corrections Director.
So move.
I will second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0. And Mark is actually ill today, but if this is in her folder, we can get Mark's signature when he gets back.
Okay.
Sounds good. The finance director is listed on that one.
Gotcha.
This one, I think we can pull this, yeah. Okay, so I'd look for a motion to approve the FY 2026-2027 Juvenile Evidence-Based Programs Grant as presented by our Community Corrections Director.
So move.
Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0.
And then I know I said in the email I sent you guys, there are 2 other grants I'm looking at. One grant is a regional collaboration grant. So we have our MOUs where Atchison provides the services or the programming services to the 2nd and 22nd judicial districts for their adult and juvenile population. As we started and we continue to provide services, we are seeing more of a need And so I am looking at applying for the regional collaboration grant on the juvenile side to potentially get a second programmer. Right now I have one full-time programmer and a part-time programmer, and it can kind of get a little difficult. Some of our groups require us to have two programmers at once. So I'm looking at that. I have not fully decided if I'm going to apply for that grant or not, because I want to make sure that whatever we apply for, we use it correctly. So I'm still kind of on the fence. That's not due until April 1st. So we'll see me in a couple more weeks if I do decide to go for that one.
Okay.
The second one is a grant through the governor's office. I believe it's going to open up in August, and that's one that I've been working with the jail. Me and Sheriff Lori have been talking about trying to provide some more resources in essence. So the idea would be, right now we go into the jail for our clients that are on probation with us and they're being housed in the jail. We do programming for them. The idea would be we'd be able to do programming for anybody within the jail. We would just make sure that we group them accordingly to risk and things along that nature. And also try and get a linkage of care to the guidance center, where the guidance center can come in and do evaluations or work with clients or get them set up for before they leave. They already know they have this appointment, things along that nature. So I'm waiting for that grant to come open, but it is the other grant that I'm looking at for applying for this year.
You know the amount of that grant?
I do not.
Okay.
Because I believe the cap has changed.
Okay.
So I don't want,
Yeah.
I'm not
no, you're fine.
100% sure on
When you find
one.
that out, would you mind letting us know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So those are the other two grants that I'm looking at applying for FY26. In regards to juvenile services, our financials, we expense $69,671.40 from our grants. That includes the money we send to USD 409 every quarter, along with our salaries, operational fees, things like that. And then in our reimbursement account, we did expense $11,965. The reason why that one is so much more than the juvenile one or the adult one is, if you remember, for a period of time, we used our own funding to continue our programming services until that grant that I got in October came into place. This is Q2 funding, and so it still holds that in there. For grants, we deposited $68,869, and we deposited $3,615 into our reimbursement account. As of 2/20, we had $153,799,000 in our grants and $55,906 in our reimbursement. The reason why I'm giving you information from November instead of from today is I'm giving you exactly what I gave my board, so you guys can hear the exact same thing, but I can definitely always send you exactly what's in there today. I might even have it on my notepad if I brought it in. And same thing with our workbook. So like I said, I was bound to determine it was going to be closed before I left for a little bit, and we were able to get that done. So all of FY24 has been approved and closed, and then FY Q1 and Q2 has been approved and closed. The issue was a little bit different in the juvenile. Somehow KDOC got a hold of a general ledger that did not belong to community corrections. It was for a different department. Well, it was for district court, one of their departments. They got a hold of that and they kept putting that amount into what we should have. I kept telling them we did not have that funding, but I was unaware that they had that general ledger. I didn't know what they had. So they finally recognized that that is not our funding, but then they still had not moved that amount out of what they were saying that we had. And they kept telling me that I did have it. I just didn't know where it was, and I did not have it. So because of that, what they said that I had in my reimbursement and my grants was much higher than I actually had in it. In January 2024, before I found that out, they had me separate my accounts because of commingling. So I had separated too much out. So long story short, it has all been solved at this point. Me, Mark, and my admin assistant were able to work on it. I sent everything to KDOC and made sure that they were aware of it, and everything via email and via phone before any movements happened, just to make sure that we were covered on all of our bases. So that one has been, the workbook is up to date and completely good. I do have one amendment. It has been signed by my board already. And it is to move funding from our juvenile intent supervision program and our case management program over to our juvenile intake and assessment center. So the reason why we have to do these movements is, one, benefits. I have to budget for benefits 6 months before we actually know what they're going to be. So I have to kind of do a little bit of guessing and things along that nature. And then the other part is salaries. We work on a as needed basis in this area. And then for training, so I always budget 16,400 for on-call, but I have to move that funding into the salary portion at some point in time. And then just some regular ebb and flows is what I would say, but I do have that amendment.
Okay, I would look for a motion to allow the chair to sign the Kansas Department of Corrections Division of Juvenile Services third quarter budget adjustment report in the amount of 36,801.72.
So move.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 2-0.
Okay, and then some general information. I did go to the directors meeting last week. There was no new updates to the adult funding formula that I spoke with you guys about last week. I am going to be sending you guys an email, just kind of giving a better outlook of what each section means and what I'm advocating in those sections that I think would be fair across the state. Over the Q2 and in the beginning of Q3, I worked on creating a formal training program for my staff to get better staff development. K.S.A requires us to get anywhere between 20 to 40 hours of training each year. And it was kind of, you have to get this, so you find where you want to get this training from. And it could have been TED Talks or things like that. Instead, I have looked at what their job is, what training they should be able to get every year, what training we can get through the county, through K.S.A and other resources. So it's a little bit more of an organized process, and ensuring that it goes along with their position. And it's not just, oh, I need training hours, so let me do this extra substance abuse class or something like that. And then we did have our audit in June of 2024. I believe I had already told you guys the outcome of that is we received an 87%. The state average was in the 60s. So we did exceed the state average. So that was great. We did have a quality improvement plan. Just some of the things that we did need to improve on. I was able to complete that. What we put in place to do was approved. I sent off the first, completion of that QIP in, I want to say it was January 2022, and they came back with a couple more things they wanted me to fix. So I sent it again in February or Friday of this last week. So, and it was just small things like in our policies or something like that. They wanted them to say a little bit more about a subject. So, but that's, otherwise that's all I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions for me.
No, you do a good job explaining it all to us, and appreciate it. I'm just happy that you found that error from many years
I know.
before, because it's like when working with spreadsheets, if you can't figure out where it is,
Yes.
it's gonna haunt you every year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So good for you. That's awesome. That's a huge sigh of relief.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we were very happy. So, and we don't have to bother Mark so much now.
You'll be happy to.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, so now just the unfinished business items on here. First Friday of the care, we pushed that to April, so we would need to record that by 3/25, which would be in 2 weeks. So just be thinking about that for a topic, and I'll put it on the March 25th agenda, that maybe after our meeting and workshop, we can do the recording takes, because I'm sure it's gonna take a few. Usually when I had to record those before, it
Yeah.
It takes a few takes there, so.
Especially the first one, because you kind of get the jitters.
Right, so, but as long as we could maybe identify the topic next week, or at least be thinking about it, if you have any topics that we could talk about. Update, Mark had asked the 4 parcels transferred to the city of Atchison Land Bank. County Counselor, do we have an update on that?
All right, well, I have a deed prepared, but there's one parcel and it's the parcel that we've had the longest. Since 1983, we have this 8.5 foot tract of, on Kearney Street.
Okay.
And it's very slim, but the legal description on that, I've talked with Jack at GIS, and he tells me it overlaps itself, so that legal description is a bad legal description, and he wanted to check it. But I do have a deed ready and prepared to go whenever you want to sign it.
Okay.
I have not talked with anybody at the city. They have, the statute requires that the city accept the land as well, and I don't know, at one time they were not willing to accept that 8.5 foot tract. But if that's changed, that's great, so.
Yeah, I think Mr. Zeltner and Mr. Westhoff were in communication on those. So if we put that on the agenda next week when Mr. Campbell and Mr. Zeltner are back, you good with that?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. We'll add that to next week. Oh, 18th. And then, okay. Tax parcels, so we published our tax sale, and then the question's been, hey, what's on the tax sale? So I was just gonna check back with you and see if, a couple weeks ago, we thought roughly 20 parcels, didn't know if that's changed, if anybody got notice and paid, or where
No.
you're at on,
I think that's about right.
okay,
I need to get the list so you can put it on the website.
okay,
I can get that done today,
okay, perfect.
so.
We
Oh,
can
have you
put
done
a,
it?
we can put a map out there also.
Okay,
Oh,
I
perfect,
mean,
All right.
we can create a map in a hurry and then you can just click on it and get the information from there, so.
that'd be great. Okay, so we'll put that list out there today, and it'll be part of the link where they're clicking on the tax sale. It'll just be,
Yes, if I can remember how to do that in Civic Plus.
Okay.
I'm sure I can. It might take a little time, but I'm sure I can.
perfect. So the county like 1-pager is still in motion. Mark was working on that with Holly, so, and then the update, Joe gave the update about the township meeting, that we had last night, so all of that is good. And then the only other thing we're gonna keep on here are the notices and communications, to keep those dates, at the forefront of everyone. Atchison County cleanup, April 25th and 26th, and the tax sale at Memorial Hall on May 6th at 3 o'clock. I think I said 3:30 last night at the township meeting, now that I think about it, but 3 o'clock. So, all right, no need for any executive sessions that I'm aware of.
Is there no county counselor update?
He just gave the update.
Well, I mean, it's not a,
He's one of our department heads, basically giving updates throughout the,
okay,
So,
okay, it's gonna
yes.
be.
Yep.
Okay, instead of, it always.
he'll
the
be a new business if it was new, but we'd already talked about those, so it's just unfinished.
Okay.
And feel free if you want to throw something at the clerk's way to put on there. Okay, so if there's no other, I would look for a motion to adjourn into workshop.
I go into workshop.
Yep.
Or here, and it's gonna
It's-
be,
Until finished.
Were you gonna go out to the
that's my,
recycling center or where?
to look at the
Oh,
building at Effingham.
yeah,
So I've got a solution
okay,
to where we can leave everything in that building out there.
okay, perfect.
So you don't.
We're just looking at housekeeping things, but if we don't need to make the trip,
Well, what
then,
I'm saying is, we can talk about it a little bit here.
okay,
We've got that, I've got that taken care of, so.
perfect. So I look for a motion to adjourn into workshop.
So move.
Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 2-0.